As most of the world slowly transitions towards renewable energy, it must be confusing to many that Canada, one of the chief proponents of renewable energy, is doubling down on its efforts to produce and distribute natural gas worldwide. Perhaps even more interesting is that, considering that this effort is one of the biggest and potentially one of the most significant megaprojects being embarked on in North America today, it's interesting how only a handful of people may be aware that this is happening. This lack of publicity is because the construction of what could potentially be powering the world isn't deemed as important as some of the major conflicts happening worldwide. It may even be considered to be less important than some other megaprojects that are being constructed. For example, the conflicts surrounding the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia may get more press than this. That being said, it would probably change, as the global energy crisis the world is currently experiencing will only be made worse as the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues without showing any signs of stopping. As the world watches helplessly as Russia continues its invasion of Ukraine, Canada has decided to pick up the slack by constructing their amazing new facility that would provide the world with its much-needed fuel once this mega project is completed. Considered to be the largest private sector investment in Canada's history, many question this move. As Canada enters into one of the most competitive industries in the world, especially at a time when the world looks to transition into a world that no longer relies on fossil fuels, will this move make Canada the world's next energy superpower, or will this move prove to be a waste of time and resources that could help improve the nation in other ways? Before we get into whether this may be a sound investment or not, let's learn a bit more about what is going on the north coast of British Columbia. Well, this mega project is being undertaken by a consortium called LNG Canada. Standing for liquefied natural gas, LNG hopes to build a mega oil refinery in Kitimat, a district municipality in the north coast region of British Columbia. Now, you may be wondering, why on earth is Canada embarking on a project that exploits fossil fuels? For several decades now, Canada has been at the forefront of the global initiative to transition from using fossil fuels to renewable energy. So how could they do what is essentially a 180-degree turn from their own values? This simple answer can perhaps be summarized in one all-powerful word: money. Some may not know, but Canada is one of the world's largest natural gas producers. Over in a place known as the Montney Basin, there seems to be enough of a natural gas reservoir to make Canada one of the biggest natural gas exporters. We may not know about this because Canada doesn't have the means to export its natural gas in the same way the US, Qatar, or Australia might be able to. However, it may not be a problem for long, because now the people of Canada have realized that there is money to be made from using their God-given resources. Once Canada started using its natural gas reservoirs, it realized that it had to deal with its poor proximity to sell this product. This is why it built what is its first LNG scheme. The nation knows it has its work cut out for it before it can start enjoying the profits of black gold. Because Canada doesn't have access to its transatlantic pipelines, finding another way to get its product across the oceans is hard. To achieve this goal, Canada has endorsed the construction of special ships that could transport this natural gas to any destination on Earth. What happens is that once the gas is transported from its source in the familiar-sounding Dawson Creek through a 670-kilometer pipeline, the gas is converted into liquid so that it can be carried onto these special ships. Once the delivery has arrived at its destination, it is reconverted to gas so that the buyers can use their products in their requested form. Looking at the site of this mega project, one would see many compartments and components that would leave many chemical engineers impressed. First are the huge process modules that stand over 35 meters tall and weigh about 4,500 tons. Manufactured in China, these huge cage-like structures must be placed on the back of large transporters, which would deliver them to their destination by road. Upon delivery, they are carefully lowered into a specially built foundation. Once put into place, these large structures act as the entry point for the gas coming from the gas lines before sending them where they can be treated and processed. Another interesting structure that can be found on the site of this $40 billion mega project is the 54-meter-tall, 800-ton absorber column that is used to extract carbon dioxide from the gas before it is liquefied for transportation. Considered the largest single piece of equipment on the site, its massive structure took several cranes and several hours to assemble. Another structure that you can't miss is the massive main storage tank. The structure is 52 meters high and 92 meters in diameter. It is believed to be one of the largest of its kind in the world. It comes with a domed tool that had to be carefully lifted in place with fans, which slowly but surely pressurized the tank and raised the roof into place after a 3-hour period. Right now, the terminal seems to be about 70% complete, and with any luck, the megastructure will be complete before the end of the decade. That said, it looks like once the megaproject is complete, it's expected by most that Asia will become Canada's most important market. The reason for this is quite simple: proximity. Considering that Asia is the closest continent to Canada's west coast, it makes sense that Canada tries to make the most of this closeness with countries like China, which still relies on some of the worst fossil fuels like coal. While natural gas is also a fossil fuel, we cannot ignore that coal is technically worse than anything that could come out of Canada's $40 billion megaproject. That said, just because it has the supply doesn't mean Asian countries will suddenly dump their coal habit. After all, countries like China are still building coal plants despite importing large amounts of LNG. While it may also be used for electricity, you'd find that those in China use it for domestic consumption or the power industry because it is considered a cheaper form of energy. As such, Canada may turn to its allies in Europe. After all, there has been a vacuum that was left open and gaping by Russia when it decided to alienate Europe with its war against Ukraine. Considering that Canada is ready to fill this hole, many expect that LNG imports into Europe will likely increase by 60%, which is good news for those who stood behind this massive investment. As encouraging as this may sound for business, problems cannot be ignored. Although they may have to deal with the issue of the long journeys which would be required to transport the product to several points in Europe, Canada cannot ignore the fact that this may be a short-term source of income because, as we have stated several times, many countries in the world are hoping to transition away from reliance on fossil fuel. Europe is at the forefront of this initiative. What would happen if the project is complete when nobody wants to buy it? As if that isn't bad enough, Canada has to deal with the weight of the costs and its prospect of failure, while also dealing with the impact of the megaproject on its local community. Initially, the project was estimated to cost only about $6 billion. However, as the costs soared to the staggering numbers that we hear today, the authorities have also had to deal with worries that this project may be compromising the integrity of the locals' hunting and fishing rights. Despite several agreements between the government and the First Nations to limit the drilling in the basin, how long will the locals be satisfied with what's going on their land? In conclusion, there is no denying that the LNG Canada megaproject is a huge gamble for all involved. With any luck, this megastructure will prove to be profitable for Canada and the world as a whole. Hopefully, the emergence of renewable energy will not lead to the ruin of this massive megaproject.